When we first moved to our acreage, we were surprised with some extra costs that we did not expect. So if you're thinking of moving to an acreage, watch this video and I promise you, you will be more prepared. Helping you buy and sell in the Edmonton area, I'm Adrienne Carlton with eXp Realty and you are watching YEG Cribs.
Here we go.
If you're doing what everyone else is doing, you're doing it wrong.
So one of the first shockers that I had when we moved to an acreage was that we were now dealing with a holding tank instead of a municipal sewer system. In town, you flush your toilet, it all goes into the municipal sewer system, and you don't have to worry about it again. When you live in the country, you have two options. You can either have a holding tank or a septic field. A holding tank is similar to a camper where you have a big tank underground, your septic is drained into that tank, and now you have to pump it out regularly. So, pump outs. That has to happen depending on the size of your family. If you have, for example, a family of 4 and you have the larger size tank, 3,200 gallons, there are different sizes by the way, then that's gonna need to be pumped out probably once a month or every 3 weeks. That is in Alberta, Canada, that is around a $250 cost. When you are living in town, you did not have to pay that. So if you're looking at acreages and you are factoring your budget, you need to ask yourself, if I'm at the top of my budget with my mortgage payments for this house, can I also throw another $240 every 3 weeks onto my monthly budget? Factor that in because it's gonna happen if you deal with a holding tank. Your other option is to only look for homes that have septic fields. With a septic field, you're gonna pump it out maybe every 2 to 3 years because it goes through a process where it leaks out into the land. But that septic field, you don't have to pump it out regularly. They do have a larger cost. So if you're looking at a house that has a holding tank, the exact same house that has a septic field is probably going to be worth a bit more. It's around $10,000 to do a holding tank, and it's around $20 to $30 for a septic field. If you find a house that you absolutely love, but you don't want to deal with the fact that it has a holding tank, you can always add a field on after. That's what we did with our house because we realized, okay, $240 a month over 5 years is basically going to pay for a septic field. So let's just pay $20,000 to add that field onto our tank, and then it actually increases our resale value as well. So if you love your house that you found, there are options. You can even take out a purchase plus improvements mortgage and say that that is going to be going towards your field, and then your field is wrapped up, your field cost is wrapped up into your mortgage. So let's talk about water systems. When you live in town, you're used to having the water come through your tap through the municipal services. On an acreage, you have two options. You don't have municipal water lines. You have either a cistern or a well. With a cistern, the cistern is basically a tank that holds water, and that supplies the water to the house. That tank needs to be refilled somehow. So you have to bring in water on a regular basis, depending on how big the tank is and how big your family is. I could just actually give you an example of my family. For our cistern, we have to fill it probably every 3 to 4 weeks. It costs us around $180 to fill it. And if we were in town, our water bill per month would be around $80 at the most. And truthfully, we'd use a lot more water because on a cistern, you just kind of like, you're like tight with the water because it costs more. So it's like shorter showers, trying to avoid using water if you don't have to, that kind of vibe. So really, comfortably, we could go through a cistern every 2 weeks if we really wanted to. Now, if you don't have a cistern, the other option is a well. And wells are great because you're not paying money to have water hauled in like you are with a cistern. You're getting it pulled up from the ground, and with it coming from the ground comes some other things like more iron content, and sometimes the water can be harder. Sometimes it can be a little bit eggy, so you have to process that water. With a cistern, you are getting city water, which is drinkable all the time, and it doesn't have a funny taste to it. So there are some positives towards a cistern, but with a well, you have those cost savings that are always very nice. And you know what? For drinking water, you can get yourself a filtered water bottle jug thingy that dispenses water. You're not paying monthly costs for your water. Now, the reason why you find cisterns sometimes is because whoever developed the house wanted to save some money, so they put a cistern in instead of a well. Cisterns are cheaper to put in. Wells are can be up to $30,000. A cistern, probably $10,000. So similar to the holding tank, it's a cost savings, but you will pay for it in the future. So if you're building a house, it's better for you, it's better for resale, to just go the extra mile, invest that little bit of extra money and put a full-on septic field and a well, and it will benefit you in the future. So let's talk about zoning and bylaws and restrictive covenants, rules basically. You would kind of think that when you move to the country, you're gonna have less rules, it's a little more free. We all dream of the country life and it being easygoing and just a chill vibe. That is definitely an aspect of it, but when you move there, there's going to be a bunch of things you also have to abide by. So for example, we live in a small village. It's out in the country, it's a lake village. When we moved in here, we luckily got in right before a bylaw was passed that restricted septic fields. So we put our septic field in, added it onto our holding tank so that we could have peace of mind, cost savings, not have to pump out our tank every 3 weeks. And right after that, a bylaw was passed that no one was allowed to put septic fields in anymore. This has to do with being near the lake at a lake property. So if you are looking to buy near a lake or looking to buy in a subdivision, there are going to be rules in these areas. You can't just go and think that you can build and do whatever you want on your property. You're still going to have to look into bylaws with the county or the village that you're in, or the lake town, or whatever it is. If you're looking at moving to the country and you want to have the farm life, you want to raise some livestock, some animals, again, there is rules in each county about how many animal units you can have in that county. If you want to have 50 chickens on a 1 acre property, that's probably not going to be allowed. So make sure you look into it with the county, how many animal units you can have per acre. Nobody wants to buy an acreage and then right next door to them, someone moves in and puts up a chicken farm with 500 chickens. So these are the things they're trying to avoid. Same within subdivision. You can live in subdivision or you can live out of subdivision. If you live out, then there are less rules. You're gonna have some rules with the county still, but in subdivision, you're gonna find even more rules. So depending on what size of acreage you have, you are going to have a certain amount of maintenance. So that's something to factor in. If you don't want to be spending your whole Saturday afternoon mowing your lawn, then make sure that you're buying something that isn't fully grassed, but maybe has 1.5 acres of trees and 1.5 acres of grass. There's little things like that that you want to watch for that are actually going to be massively time consuming in your life. And if you don't have time for that or you don't want to devote your time to that, then just really watch what you're purchasing, because sometimes there's hidden time wasters on acreages. You're gonna have a ride-on lawnmower now. So that's gonna be at least $5,000 to purchase one of those. If your acreage is big enough, you're actually gonna need a small tractor with a little attachment thingy that mows lawns. If you are buying something that has trees, we have trees along our driveway. It's beautiful. It really shapes our driveway, but there's a lot of them and they're massive and they need to be trimmed regularly. When it comes to snow plowing your driveway, if you have a massive driveway, you're probably gonna need to invest in a shovel type attachment that either goes on your tractor or your lawnmower or your quad. There's all these different mechanical items that you're gonna need now just to maintain the property. On the note of driveways, you are gonna either have to refill your gravel. If you have a gravel driveway, those need to be topped up almost every year because you get those little bumps in it as you drive on it, or you're gonna wanna pave it. To pave a driveway and the front in front of your garage, you're looking at $15,000 to $30,000 depending on how big of a driveway it is. Internet. People always ask me about internet in the country. They say, Adrienne, if I move out here, who are my internet providers? You cannot get typical internet that you would find in town out in the country. You have to get specialized internet. So there's a few options. I've tried a couple of them. You can try ExploreNet, is a very popular one. The TELUS Hub, that's also quite popular. We tried it. It worked pretty good. But we wanted to try the next level up, so we went with Starlink. And Starlink, even though it took a little while for us to get approval, we ordered it. It took about 6 months for it to come and be officially set up in our area. It is as good as in town. So I would definitely recommend Starlink if you're moving to the country. It works excellent. Utility providers. So this is a little bit similar to in town. You do have quite a few of your similar providers in the Alberta area. You've got ATCO, EPCOR. In my specific location, we have to go with the one gas company that's available. They own the rights out here, which is West Parkland Gas Co-op. So it's going to depend on where you're purchasing. That will determine which providers are available to you. But quite often, the energy providers are the same. It's just the gas that I've found is different from time to time. So another thing to factor in is the distance that you are to the nearest town. This is probably going to be the town you get groceries at. Maybe your kids will be in sports or dance class. You might go to church there, and just factor in how much you're actually going to be driving. Gas prices have gone up extremely high compared to when we first moved out here. So we're paying a lot more for gas now. We're spending a lot of time driving back and forth. We use my amazing mother's support for babysitting and whatnot, so she's driving out here as well. And there's also the safety aspect to factor in. When you're on the road more, driving down highways and then driving down back roads, sometimes it's in the dead of winter and it's just snowed. You're not only gonna need to do that driving, but you also need the right vehicle for it. You need 4x4 or at least all-wheel drive winter tires. You do not want to end up in the ditch out here. You do not want your amazing sweet grandma who's coming to babysit end up in the ditch. The other thing is the safety aspect beyond the weather conditions. There's deers that jump out. You are more at risk for having something happen like that. My mom was driving out, bringing my kids home after sports the other day, and a deer jumped out and hit her car, knocked her little mirror off of her door. Guess who's going to be paying for that? You're welcome, Mom. But it's a factor when you're living in the country and you're driving that much more out into areas where you're dealing with extreme weather conditions and nature. Something to factor in, and just ask yourself if you're prepared to sacrifice the time with all that extra driving, more money on gas, and the risk that it puts you at when you're driving more. Another thing you want to ask yourself is, what are you truly looking for? Are you really wanting to get away from it all, get away from people, land somewhere that feels very secluded, or do you just want a little piece of the country life but still feel like you have some neighbors? Once you move out into the country, if you're on a larger acreage, you might love it and you might say, yes, there's no people around me, this is what I want. Or you might say, I'm a little uncomfortable with this. I feel too far from everyone. I feel vulnerable. I feel lonely. It's creepy. That's personally how I would feel on a very large acreage with no one around me. So we chose to move somewhere where we're in half-acre lots and we're in a village. We have neighbors. We have a little bit of a community vibe, yet we're out in the country and we're in nature. I'll see deer run across my lawn. I have a little lake that I go paddleboarding on. It's perfect for me and what I want. So I just recommend that you don't just think about the house and trees, but think about the size of property that you want and the kind of vibe that you want. Do you want secluded or do you want community? There's subdivisions that have smaller acreages, like half acre, 1 acre, and then there's subdivisions that have 3 to 5 acres, or you can be out of subdivision and have 100 acres. So narrowing in on what you want is important. So overall, after living in the country for 2 years now, and coming from being a total city slicker, at one point I wanted to live downtown Edmonton because I love the urban vibe. I actually truly love living in the country, and I think we're gonna stick around here for a while. I live by the lake, I've got a nice little half-acre property, it's peaceful, it's quiet, there's nature around, it's a slower paced life, but it's just amazing. So if you're thinking that the acreage life might be for you, or that's on your grid that you wanna make a move, please feel free to reach out. I know obviously a lot about acreages because I live on one, and I truly love selling acreage properties. So I'm your girl if you need any help. If you liked the video, be sure to like it, share it with a friend, especially if you know someone looking to move to an acreage. This will be super helpful to them. And if you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.